We think of modern Europe as a region of culture, democracy, and peace, as having escaped history. But that escape is largely due to the Americans' restructuring of all things European. What lies under the historical veneer of calm is the most war-torn and strategically unstable patch of land on the planet. Modern Europe is the purest distillation of the heights and complete artifice of the Bretton Woods system. Future Europe's problems are many, but four stand out. The first is energy. The Europeans are more dependent upon energy imports than the Asians, and no two European countries think the problem can be solved the same way. The Germans fear that not having a deal with the Russians means war. The Poles want to deal with anyone but Russia. The Spanish know the only solution is the Western Hemisphere. The Italians fear they must occupy Libya. The French want to force a deal on Algeria. The Brits are eyeing West Africa. Everyone is right. Everyone is wrong. The second is demographic. The European countries long ago aged past the point of even theoretical repopulation, meaning that the European Union is now functionally an export union. Without the American-led order, the Europeans lose any possibility of exporting goods, which eliminates the possibility of maintaining European society in its current form. The third is economic preference. Perhaps it is mostly subconscious these days, but the Europeans are aware of their bloody history. A large number of conscious decisions were made by European leaders to remodel their system with a socialist bent, so their populations would be vested within their collective systems. This worked. This worked well. But only in the context of the order, with the Americans paying for the bulk of defense costs and enabling growth that the Europeans could have never fostered themselves. Deglobalize, and Europe's demographics and lack of global reach suggest that permanent recession is among the better interpretations of the geopolitical tea leaves. I do not see a path forward in which the core of the European socialist democratic model can survive. The fourth and final problem: not all European states are created equal. For every British heavyweight, there is a Greek basket case. For every insulated France, there is a vulnerable Latvia. Some countries are secure or rich or have a tradition of power projection. Others are vulnerable or poor or are a little more than historical doormats. Perhaps worst of all, the biggest economic player, Germany, is the one with no options but to be the centerweight of everything. While the two countries with the greatest capacity to go solo, France and the United Kingdom, hedged their bets and never really integrated with the rest of Europe. There is little reason to expect the French to use their reach to benefit Europe, and there is no reason to expect assistance from the British, who formally seceded from the European Union in 2020. History, unfortunately, offers us some fairly clear paths forward. As the reliability of long-haul maritime transport evaporates, and the United States, by far Europe's largest market, goes its own way, the Europeans will put a premium on protecting what they have and know, their own supply chains and their own markets. That Europe is starting as the most protectionist set of economies in the order era doesn't help. The end result will be the creation of several mini-Europes as various major powers attempt to throw economic, cultural, and in some cases military nets over wider regions. The United Kingdom, France, Germany, Sweden, and Turkey will all go their own way and attempt to attract and/or coerce select neighbors to come along for the ride. For those of you who know your Persian, Greek, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, German, British, French, medieval, or early industrial histories, this will feel disturbingly familiar. After all, history has no endgame. It will be worth the Europeans' while to obsess particularly about the Mediterranean. Under the order, it has been a bit of a lovely internal channel for the continent. But looking forward, it is far more likely to return to its historical norm of being the world's most contested waterway. Via the Suez Canal, the Mediterranean is Europe's connection to Persian Gulf oil and East Asian manufacturers. Egypt cannot protect the canal zone, but neither can any individual European country dominate Egypt. Via the Turkish Straits, the Med is Europe's connection to the energy and agricultural surpluses of the former Soviet states. Turkey is absolutely certain to take over the Straits, and no one has the capacity to challenge the Turks in their own front yard. None of these competitions are new to students of history. What has been new is that the Americans have smothered them, all of them, for decades. To believe that globalization will continue without an overarching enforcer and referee, you must believe three things. First, that all powers in a given region will agree to do what the most potent regional power demands. That the Japanese and Taiwanese will accede to Chinese efforts to redefine the structural, economic, political, and military arrangements of East Asia. That the French, Poles, Danes, Dutch, and Hungarians, among others, will actively transfer wealth and control to Germany as the Germans age into obsolescence. That Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates will defer to Iran on issues of regional control and oil policy. That Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Sweden, Finland, Poland, Moldova, Romania, and Uzbekistan will not resist Russia reasserting control over all of them. That Pakistan will accede to India being large and in charge. That Iran, Iraq, Syria, Russia, and Germany will not resist Turkey muscling itself up to the big table. That the various African nations will quietly accede to a renewed colonial wave. The Americans have held all these reckonings in abeyance since 1945. Now remove the American security environment. Look at the map with fresh eyes. Look at any map with fresh eyes. Second, you must believe that certain tools of statecraft will remain firmly off the table, most notably military tools. That the Germans, Russians, Iranians, and Chinese will not use military force to impress their wills upon their neighborhoods. That powers with military reach, France, the United Kingdom, Turkey, and Japan come to mind, will not use their capacity to short-circuit the actions of their less mobile competitors. History isn't simply littered with examples to the contrary. Most of history is the contrary. Except history from 1945 to the present, of course. Third, you must believe that the dominant regional powers will not come into conflict. That the Russians and Germans, the Chinese and Indians, the Russians and Chinese, the Turks and the Russians, the Turks and the Iranians will always see eye to eye. Offhand, I can think of 10 examples of this not working out in just the single century before 1945. The world's supply of grievances is inexhaustible. For the most part, those grievances have not been acted upon for 75 years, but only because the Americans changed the rules of the game. Regardless of what goes wrong, long-haul transport is an instant casualty because long-haul transport doesn't simply require absolute peace in this or that region. It requires absolute peace in all regions. Such long-haul disruption describes 3/4 of all shipments in energy, manufacturing, and agriculture.